All right, so for polynomial function, this is the polynomial function of degree n will have the form look like this. So it's have a coefficient and x to the power n plus another coefficient x to the power n minus 1, so on. Is considered as a polynomial function with degree n, and n is always greater than or equal to 0. So the power is always have to be an integer greater than or equal to 0. So in the family of the polynomial function is have something called quadratic function. So quadratic function is the function that have a degree 2. Okay, the highest degree in this polynomial called quadratic will be 2. And then you also have a cubic function. The highest power will be 3. Okay, and so on. You're going to have a quartet, but anything after that, you can calling that as a polynomial function. So polynomial function have two different end behavior. So some of the polynomial function graph will look like this. If you look at this is the polynomial of degree 3. Okay, so degree, when the degree is odd, so the highest degree is odd, then you may have the graph that when x approaching to negative infinity, y is also approaching to negative infinity. And when x approaching to positive infinity, y will approaching to positive infinity, which means when x is getting smaller on the left-hand side, the y value getting smaller on the left-hand side. I mean, yeah, on the left-hand side, not right-hand side. Left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, if your x approaching bigger on the right-hand side, then the y is also approaching bigger. So this is when you have the polynomial of degree is odd. The highest degree is odd. For example, like degree 3, degree 4, I mean not 4, 5, 7, something like that. Then you're gonna have the shape of the graph will look similar like this. And there's another one is when you have the other direction. So on this way, it's going like this. So on the left-hand side, when x approaching to a very small number, negative infinity, y is getting bigger. And on the right-hand side, when x approaching to really big number, y getting smaller. So, but when we know that the graph of the polynomial will be the first one or the second one when the degree is odd, right? So the first one is going to be depend on the first leading number. Okay, so a sub n. So on the first one, if your a sub n is positive, then you're gonna have this behavior and behavior. Okay, but if your the first coefficient is negative, then you're gonna have the second behavior. So these gonna be called the end behavior of the graph. Okay, so end behavior. Okay, so you're gonna have the odd degree. So the higher degree is odd, and the polynomial will have these two different shape. Okay, so in the middle, it could happen to be something different. It does not necessary to be like this. So it could be more than that and like this. Okay, so but the end behavior will be the same for all the odd function, with the coefficient is greater than 0 and the coefficient is less than 0. So for the even degree, how about for the even degree? The end behavior of even degree. Okay, so the degree is highest, just like quadratic. Quadratic is an even degree, right? So how the graph will look like? So the graph will look like this. Okay, so on the left-hand side, when x approaching to a very small number, the y getting bigger. On the right-hand side, when x approaching to a bigger number, y is also getting bigger. And that is true because the degree is even. No matter the x is negative or the x is positive, y is always negative. I mean, y is always positive. Okay, so this is for the degree is even, and you may also see the graph look like this, right? You may also see some graph of the polynomial of degree that is even, look like this. Okay, so when x is approaching to negative infinity, y is negative infinity. When x approaching to positive infinity, y is also negative infinity. Okay, so when we know which one is the cases, okay, which one gonna be the one that is pointing up like this, and which one is the one is pointing down, and similarly, we're gonna look through the first coefficient, okay, the a sub n. So if a sub n is positive, then you're gonna have the first behavior of the graph look like this. Both is pointing up. But if you have a sub n is less than 0, then you're gonna have the graph is pointing down like this. Okay, so these are called the polynomial function. And in each polynomial function, we will look through the next concept that we will talk about is the zero of the quadratic function of the polynomial function. And what are the zero mean? The zero mean the value of x that make the function equal to 0. Or the other way to say is the value of x that make the y is equal to 0. So the 0 of the function is happen on the x-intercept. So these are the 0 of the function, and these are the 0 of the function, okay? So every polynomial will have a 0, either will be a real 0 or the imaginary complex 0, okay? So we will next looking how to find the 0 of the polynomial function. Now let's look at how to find the 0 of a quadratic function. So I have the quadratic function at x squared plus 2x minus 3. So this is quadratic function. The coefficient a sub n in this case is a positive number, right? Positive 1. A sub n is positive 1. So you know that the graph gonna be like this, open up. Okay, the graph is open up because this point in the coefficient is positive. And now our target or our goal is to find the 0. So what value of x will give you the y or the output is 0. Okay, what is the output? Output is f of x or the y value. So when you see the problem say, oh, find the 0, the first thing that we're gonna do is let the function equal to 0. So we're gonna let f of x equal to 0. And what is f of x? F of x is x squared plus 2x minus 3 equal to 0. And how you gonna find the solution of the quadratic function or quadratic equation? You have two ways to do. You can either to solve this, to solve quadratic equation, you can factor if it's possible, or using quadratic formula. Okay, so if you took pre-cal, you may see this formula before, or you take algebra class, you may see this formula before. If you forget, it's okay. Okay, so when you solve an equation, you can either factor or you either apply the quadratic formula. Okay, so when we know we're gonna use factor, it's easier. When you see the coefficient a sub n is a 1, it's gonna be better to factor if it's possible. If not, then we're gonna use the quadratic. Okay, so in this problem, because the coefficient is 1, I'm gonna consider using factor first and see if it is possible. Okay, so how do we factor? Factor means I will need to do something like this. Okay, I need to break this quadratic expression into two linear expression. So what is the linear expression? I have x squared right here. I'm gonna break down the x squared become x, 1x here and 1x here. So 1x here and 1x here, okay? And I'm gonna need another number right next to the x, connect with the x by subtraction or addition, okay? So where do I get that number from? It's from the last number in our quadratic, so which is -3. And I will think of, oh, -3. Which two number multiply will give you -3? I have -1 times 3, or I have 1 times -3. So which one I know I'm gonna use in order to put in here? Now we're gonna look at the middle value. The middle value is say, oh, the two number that you find from the product of the last number, they add up must equal to 2. Okay, so if I take -1 plus 3, what do I have? I have 2. Okay, but if I take 1 plus -3, I have -2. So what do you think? Which pair I gonna choose to put the value in here? I'm gonna choose the first one, right? Because it's gonna be -1 and 3. 3 minus 1 will give you 2. So the first one pair is gonna be the candidate, right? So we're gonna put it here, plus 3, -1. Okay, or you can write -1 and then plus 3, -1, and then add 3. It doesn't matter. The order doesn't matter, okay? But the sign doesn't matter, okay? So make sure you choose the right size. So this one, I have x minus 1 times x plus 3 equal to 0. And then we're going to solve for x. So my x going to be, when you have the equation into the factor form, you can simply set x minus 1 equals 0 or x plus 3 equals 0. That will give you x equal 1 or x equal -3. Okay, so that's going to be the 0 of the quadratic function.